everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marie, and today's video is going to be a life update and an IVF update. So last week I was going to upload a video on like presents you can get your dad for Father's Day because it's coming up next month, and I thought it would be nice to think about dad a little ahead of time so it's not last minute, especially for people who are still on quarantine. You could order something and get it in time. And the video did not turn out well. First, while I was actually recording the video, I lost track and I had things written down. It was so bad. I was like, oh, okay, where am I? And I had combined two things together after I started recording because they were really similar items. And then I scratched things out and I lost track. I was like, okay, well, I combined these two. What number am I on now? And then I re-recorded and that didn't go well either, even though I had taking the time to rewrite the list and combining those two things. I ended up just it was a mess. It was so bad. And I was like, it's okay, I can kind of fix it. And I recorded a little thing at the end saying, sorry, that was a mess with the numbers and everything. And I was just going to put the numbers across the bottom instead of, what I was actually saying about, oh, this is number 3. And it was number 5 or something. So that video it was a huge mess just from the beginning. And then my computer kept crashing or freezing on me, and I wasn't able to finish editing the video. And I talked to my husband, and he told me, well, what you could do is you could kind of reboot your computer. And I don't know the technical term, but it's basically wiping it clean and reinstalling the OS system. I was like, okay, I'll try that. And that totally worked. It's just so much better now. It's right here. I keep looking at it. That's what I know you guys are here, but my computer's over here. So that's what I'm looking at. And it's one of my babies because I live on this computer. I do all my work on it and everything. So I'm a graphic designer, for those of you who are new to my channel. So I do need to have a Mac and all the Adobe products to work on that stuff. And when my computer starts to not work well, it scares me because I've had laptops, I'm shaking the table, sorry. I've had laptops crash on me in the past, and it's I always keep everything on an external hard drive, so I'm not worried about my files or anything. But when your computer just dies and then you have nothing for a couple days before you can either get it fixed or buy a new one, it's frustrating. And then because we're doing the IVF stuff, we don't have just tons of money sitting around, and apples can be quite pricey. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to try anything just to prolong the life of my computer. And then the second problem I had with the video was the program that I use is Adobe Premiere. It's a pretty standard program. And the 2020 version just doesn't work on my computer. It's really choppy, and there's just so many errors that I get. So I've been using the 2019 version, and I went on all these chat boards. Even when I first installed the 2020 version, I was going on chat boards because I was like, why is it so choppy? When you press play and you're editing the video and you want to stop it at a certain place, you should see the video like you're seeing how I'm talking right now. That's what you should see. It shouldn't be like doing that where choppy. That's really all I can explain. It's so annoying. So it's really hard to stop it. Like when I edit my videos, I try not to edit them stop it at a place where my mouth is open and I'm making a weird face. I try to kind of edit it where I'm like this, and I have kind of no expression, or resting bitch face, whatever. That's better than being like, So I couldn't see those points, and I was like, oh yeah, I have to get the 2019 version. And then I realized I didn't back that up. I didn't save it or anything, and I was like, because Adobe is cloud-based now and it's not discs, I can't just stick a disc in and just have the old version. So I started Googling how to get the old version, and nothing was helping. It took me forever. I think 4 days to find, that's a long time, to find the actual way to download the old version. And my husband was even helping me. And together we were like, okay, this is it. And I finally got it downloaded, and it was just that was way harder than it needed to be. Even when you go on the help section on Adobe, they have chat boards, and then there's just their regular thing where frequently asked questions. Even there, it wasn't coming up. And we had to search with quote marks and plus and minuses. It was not it was way more work than it should have been for something so simple. So it was really frustrating. And then when I finally got the older version, I finished editing the video and I was like, this is crap. It's really just, my videos aren't spectacular to begin with, but it was like a flaming pile. So I was just like, no, this is just too messy. People are going to be like, why are we watching her? And it's not really the reason I'm making my videos anyway. I mean, it's kind of like more of just a fun filler video. So I was like, okay, no. And then the other thing that happened last week was I just didn't feel all that great. Like I wasn't depressed or sick. I just kind of felt like blah and just kind of sluggish the whole week. So I didn't put a lot of effort into trying to do these things either. Sorry, I think I just touched the microphone. And then I also found out that one of my uncles passed away really unexpectedly. And it just was like another thing that just kind of made me feel yuck and blah. And just, it was just like, eh. So I kind of took last week off and just moped around for the most part. But on Sunday, I did have to go in for my baseline ultrasound. So the IVF stuff is on its way. And the baseline ultrasound was a little uncomfortable. It's very invasive because it's not just, when you see ultrasounds on TV, they show you a pregnant woman with a big belly and they have that little thing and they just squirt the gel and they just move around and you see a baby. That's the nice version of an ultrasound. This is like a wand and they insert it in you. And so it's like, ugh. It was warm, which was nice because it wasn't freezing like normal. And the warmth surprised me because I was like, oh. And she was like, are you okay? I'm like, it's just warm. She's like, oh, sorry. I'm like, no, it's fine. Because I was expecting it to be like an icicle and it wasn't. So I was like, oh, okay. And then, it's not comfortable because they're wiggling it around and it just feels weird. And she was just checking to make sure that my ovaries are okay, that my fallopian tubes are still open, and everything looked like it should. And so that part of everything was okay, but she asked me if I knew that I had fibroids, and I said no. She's like, well, they can cause infertility and cramping, and I was like, okay, that explains why I've had cramps, and I wasn't on my period at that point. When my period ended the week before, or when my period had started, let me look at the calendar. Yeah, so from the 9th to around the 15th, I had my period, and then they had me start birth control pills because they don't want you to ovulate too soon, and that kind of prolongs it. And then the other thing is they say with the birth control pills, sometimes they have you take it for a few days, or they'll have it take you take it for like up to 2 weeks. And with that, they're like, you could still have your period. And I was like, oh, okay. But I only took it for a few days before they told me to stop. So I'm like, I shouldn't have my period. I kind of had a period yesterday. That was surprising. I was like, okay, why? I didn't expect that. But then today I'm not bleeding. So it was kind of like a one-day spotting thing, which makes me happy because I don't want to have my period again. I just had it like a week ago. So, okay, so back to Sunday. So she told me that, and I was like, okay. So I went home and I Googled fibroids, and because I've heard the term, but typically you hear fibromyalgia. I don't know if I'm saying that correct. And you'll hear that on TV where people say they just have this chronic pain, and it's kind of, it's a controversial thing because some people say it's real, some people say it's not, it's just in the brain. But that's not what this is. And it's kind of like in your uterus, and it's these like spots. I'll put a link below. I can't really describe it very well, but it's causing me to cramp, and it can cause infertility or make it difficult to get pregnant or to stay pregnant. So that's just, it's like anything that weird is going to happen, it always happens to me. And at this point in my life, I'm just like, just not surprising. It's typical. It's like the weirdest 0.01% of side effects. That's me. So I'm like, okay. And so I read about it and I'm like, all right, well, the doctor will call me if he's concerned about that. And he hasn't so far. And so after I did the baseline ultrasound, I talked to them on Monday and they're like, okay, we're going to give you 3 prescriptions. And they have a website where they upload your calendar and then any documents that you need to know about or anything that you need to give them. So I went on the website and I downloaded my calendar and I printed it out because it's kind of hard to read on the computer. it has all these click to see more things. And so most of it, it's the click to see more is the same information. So I just have that one time and then I have the rest of it. So it's like, take this medication this day, this dose. And so on Wednesday, we started doing the injections, but I had talked to them about the medication the week before, and they sent it to Kaiser. And on Monday, I noticed that Kaiser hadn't filled the prescription. So I called the pharmacy and I asked them to fill it. And there was one of them that they couldn't fill for me. So I called back the IVF doctor and they were still technically open, but I couldn't leave a message. And this is where things get a little weird. And part of it is the corona thing, and part of it is just how their office works. If you leave a message after 1:30, they won't call you back the same day unless it's they deem it as super important and they have time. So it was before 3:30. That's when their office closed, and I got their answering service. So I was like, well, it's not really an emergency, but it is really important because I only have basically one day to get this medication before I'm supposed to take it. And they told me that it was a specialty medication and sometimes it has to be ordered from California. So, I want them to have like a day and a half at least because it wasn't that late in the day. So she was like, okay, I'll tell the nurse. I'm like, good, because it's not really the doctor that's going to do anything anyway. It's the nurse that's going to tell me where I can get the medication or order it for me somewhere. And they didn't call me back. And then the next day I had made sure that my phone was turned up all the way. So if they called, because they start at 7:30 in the morning and I have no reason to be up that early. So I don't get up that early. And my phone was next to my bed. It was up all the way. It was charged. I had taken the do not disturb off and I didn't get a phone call in the morning. By lunchtime, I was like, okay, they haven't called me. So then I called them back and I left a message and I was just like, I really need this prescription. I'm supposed to be starting it Wednesday. And they told me where I could pick it up at, and that was in Atlanta. And I live outside of Atlanta, so it's about a half an hour from my house. It's not that far. The other pharmacy through my insurance that I went to get my other medication from is also half an hour away, but in the opposite direction. So I went to that pharmacy first because it closed earlier. I got that medication, which took forever because they only let so many people in the pharmacy at one time because of the corona. And I was like, there was two people in there and then one waiting. And so I was the third person. And so they made me wait outside for a second until one of the people that was being helped left, which I'm not going to complain about that. I don't want to get sick. And it wasn't like tons of people, but it just was a long process. So when it was finally my turn, which wasn't that long of a wait, the nurse brought over my medication and she started asking me questions. And I was just like, oh, I don't know how much I'm supposed to be taking because I printed it out and I didn't read it. I usually just go pick up my medications and then leave. I don't really interact with them that much. So I wasn't prepared to answer questions or anything. And then the pharmacist came over and he started asking questions and I was just like, okay, I know it's an injection. And we watched a video on how to do it. And it's a really similar to how my grandma did her, she had diabetes and how she did that. And I went to training with a nurse where the nurse actually showed us how to do it. It wasn't just a video. And I helped my grandma a few times do her diabetes medications and everything. So it's not something that was completely new to me, but I didn't know how often I had to take what dosage or when I was going to start the specific one he was asking about because two of them started with a G and I didn't know which one was the one on the paper that I had to start the next day. And I was just like, I'm not sure. I'm like, I have all the info at home. So he was like, okay. And then he came back a minute later while she was updating the information because one of the prescriptions just went through and it was like, okay, this is whatever amount. And then the one that he had questioned me about, it wasn't in their system correctly. So it was overcharging me. And he mentioned that when he was standing there. So she was trying to fix it. And I appreciate that because these prescriptions were not cheap. I paid almost $900 for those two. And then when I had spoke to, I'm pretty sure it was the same pharmacist the day before about getting all three of them, he mentioned that one of them was going to be free because we had reached our deductible. And I was like, oh, great. But that was the one that we ended up having to buy somewhere else because when he was just like, okay, let me call you back. And he called me back like 20 minutes later. He's like, I just can't get that one prescription. It's not at our other pharmacy either. So unfortunately, it wasn't free, but one of the two that I did get that day was only like $30 because of our deductible. So it was like, okay, that's not that bad. So then he comes back and he takes the prescription away from her and he's like, when are you going to start this? I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is when I start tomorrow. It wasn't, but they're very similar. They're both these little vials where you add powder to it and like you don't shake it, but you just let it mix itself. You take some of it out and then you have to inject yourself. So I knew that that was one of them and I didn't know what the other one at the other pharmacy was. So I was just like, I think this is when I'm starting tomorrow. And he's like, okay, I'm going to mix it for you. As long as you use this within 20 days, it should be fine. I'm like, okay. And he's like, you have to refrigerate it. I'm like, all right. So I finally left. I think I was there about half an hour, which was way longer than I thought. And again, I'm not going to complain. It just took longer than I thought it was going to take. So then I drove home, and on the way home, I called the other pharmacy because when the nurse that I had spoke to earlier mentioned that pharmacy, she said to call them just to make sure they have it and you can pick it up. And they closed at 6:30, and this was like almost 5 o'clock. So I went home and I kept losing her when I was trying to call that pharmacy. I would get on, like they have, this big list of press 1 for this, 2 for this, whatever. And when I finally got through, it's like I was talking stuff and the reception around here is really bad. It's really hilly and I have Getro. So I don't get the greatest reception. In California, I never had a problem. But out here, there's certain places, even in my backyard, I'll walk and it's like, I go from 4 bars to 0. And it's like, I'm 20 feet from the house. So it's like, I don't have the greatest reception around here either. And I finally got home. I put the prescription in the fridge and then I ran back outside, got in my car and started driving to Atlanta. And that was fine. It just took a half an hour. There wasn't really any traffic. It was just during the week, and normally at that time there would be a lot more traffic, but they closed at 6:30 and I got there at 5. So I wasn't like, 2 minutes to the closing going, hey, please give me my prescription. So they weren't like bitchy or anything. And they actually brought it out to my car, which was really nice. I was like, oh, that's so sweet of them. And, when I rolled down my windows for a few minutes before they came out so I could, get my germs out of the car. And I know I'm not sick because I've been at home for weeks, but, I want them to like be feeling reassured that I'm not trying to cough on them or anything. And then when she came up, I had my mask on, so I didn't breathe on her, and she gave me the bag and it was huge. I was like, okay, wow. So the ones that I should have brought a sample, you know what? Let me go get it. Okay, so I have a sample because I just thought it'll be easier to just show you. So this is what I'm taking, and there's 1 pack for each day. So it's kind of hard to see. So, pretty loud. Sorry. Okay, so each day I do this in the morning and at night between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. and then 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. So we've been doing it at 8 o'clock because my husband doesn't have to be up at 6 a.m. either. So he's just like, that's a little early. So you take this little vial and probably with the light, it just has the batch number and stuff. Maybe you can see the back of this. So see, there's some powder. There's powder in there. And it comes with this syringe. So you take this, and this is the solution, and there's a little lid there. You take it off and you have a little alcohol wipe. You wipe the lid and then you stick the solution in there and you just squirt it in and you let it sit for a second so it dilutes the solution and the powder and everything. So it'll mix by itself. You don't have to shake it or anything. They actually tell you not to shake it. So you take one of these syringes and you stick it into the bottle. Well, actually, first you pull it back to the amount that you're supposed to, like I take 225. So the 225 is right there. So I pull the plunger back to that. I stick it into the bottle and I push the air in there. Then sorry, I kicked the table. Then I flip it upside down, and then I pull it back past the amount that I need. And you kind of go like that. You flick it a little bit and make sure all the air bubbles go up. And then you push it back and to get all the air out until you hit the amount that you need. Then you take your stomach and you squish it and you inject it. So my nurse friend, hi Ari, she told me the other day when we were talking that if you just jab it real quickly, it sounds brutal, but she's like, it doesn't hurt as much. And the first time my husband did it, because I cannot stab myself with a needle, I can't. No. I can poke other people, but when it comes to needles, if I'm looking at it, I will cry. It will hurt way more. If I'm not looking, it's fine. I can deal with it. So the first time he did it pretty quickly and it didn't really hurt. The second time, for some reason, he poked me with it and then he pulled it out and I was like, ow. And then he did it again and I was like, then I opened my eyes and I looked at him like, what are you doing? And he's just like, oh, it didn't go in all the way. And then he's standing there with the needle. I'm like, okay, you can only use those syringes so many times before the tip gets to be dull. Twice. That's kind of it. Once to get the stuff out of the vial and then once into the skin and then it starts hurting. Like the third time he did it, it hurt really bad. And then the first 2 places that he poked me, I actually had a little welt for about 3 hours afterwards. So the next day I was just like, you have to do it way faster than that. Like, remember what Ari said, just do it real fast. And he's just like, okay. So yesterday, was it yesterday? Yesterday was Thursday. So yesterday wasn't as bad. And today, again, this morning when he did it, it's like a little pinch, but it's bearable. That's something that I have to do every day. And then I have another ultrasound on Sunday. And I keep touching the table, making the thing wiggle, sorry. So on Sunday, I go back in and they're going to see where we are with this process. And then they're going to add in the other medications. So I'm not sure which ones, because I do have 2 of them, or how much of each of them. That's something that they're going to update the calendar and they'll let me know on Sunday. Because they're going to see how my ovaries are reacting to these medications. And so far, the only side effect that I've had is they make me extremely tired. Like this morning, he gave it to me and I went back to sleep. It was 8. That's not that early or that late. But I was just like, okay, I'm super, super tired. And I didn't get up until almost 1 o'clock. I couldn't wake up. Like I could feel myself trying to wake up. And you know when you're like dreaming, but you're like, wake up, it's late, get up. And I couldn't even open my eyes. And I finally woke up. I was just like, okay, I have to get up. I have things to do today. I can't just sleep all day long because then I'll be up all night long. And I finally got up and it was just like, oh, I felt so groggy. And when he gave me the shot last night, it put me to sleep too. So hopefully I can kind of get used to it a little bit because that's the only side effect. And it's not the worst thing that could happen, being sleepy, but it's kind of annoying. So hopefully I can do something because I have a feeling even though he'll give me the shot tonight, I'll probably be up all night long because I slept so much today. I slept way too much. I slept more than 12 hours. So we'll see how tonight goes. But so yesterday was Thursday. I had to get a vaccine for chickenpox. We had a phone appointment with him about 2 weeks ago, and he told me that I wasn't immune to chickenpox. And I'm like, really? Because I've never had chickenpox, and I had the vaccine as a kid. I got the vaccine 2 years ago, and I had also gotten the vaccine for German measles, which is rubella. And I know that I get these things. They tell me, oh, you need this vaccine. And I go and I get them. And then they do a test a few months later and they're like, you're not immune to it. And it's like, I know I got this vaccine. And one time I thought I had gotten a vaccine because I went down, they took blood, they poked me with something. And they're just like, oh, well, you didn't get all of your vaccines. I'm like, well, I went there. Why didn't I get them all? It's like, why wasn't it in the list of things for me to get that day? And how come the nurse didn't give it to me? So I had gone back and 2 years ago and gotten the chickenpox one again. And then earlier this year I went and it was either this year or last year. I can't remember. It's kind of, this year has been a blur. it's probably been a blur for you guys too. It's like, what day is it? For the rubella one, I did have to go and get that one again. So it's like, I feel like every time I talk to them, they're like, you're not immune to this, or you're not immune to that. I'm like, oh, really? So I went down and I had to email my doctor, and I was like, hey, so can I get this vaccine? Do you have to put an order in for it? And she's like, yeah. And so she emailed me back like 2 days later, and she spoke to a different department about vaccines and everything, because in my record it showed that I got it 2 years ago. And she's like, if you're still not immune to it, that could be a problem. So she's like, we'll give you a booster, and then in a month you have to go back and get checked to make sure you're immune to it. I'm like, okay. And the IVF doctor said it's not something that I should do right away. Like, I have time to do it, but he's like, you want to get it at least a month before you actually do the implantation. Well, I'd rather do that now rather than later, because we're doing the egg harvesting. So I want to make sure that I'm immune to all these things before I get pregnant, because as an adult, if you get chickenpox, it can be deadly. And if you're pregnant, it's not good for you, especially with the rubella as well. Those two, they can cause like birth defects and things like that, or you can lose your baby. So even though I'm quarantining myself anyway, I still don't want to get those things, because they're just miserable. And it's also funny. I think it's a genetic thing on my part with the chickenpox, because my grandmother had chickenpox 3 times, which is really unusual. And then she had shingles, which is a different type of chickenpox, as a like a senior. She was in her 70s, and she got it on her face right here. And it was all like, it looked like a rash on her face. And I remember telling her, you need to go to the doctor, because, you know, her skin was kind of dry and it was bothering her, and it was itchy. And I was like, that's not just dry skin. It looked weird. It looked like a weird rash. So she went, and they're like, yeah, you have shingles. And she was like, oh, she's like, that's like the 4th time, because it is a strain of chickenpox. I was like, oh, my poor grandma. So I kind of feel like maybe it's just something genetically that I'm not very immune to, because typically if you get it once, you're done. But she told me that her and her brother got it when they were little, and then she had 3 younger sisters, and each time one of them got it, she got it again. So, like, I think 2 of them had it at the same time, because that was her 2nd time, and then the 3rd one had it later. So yeah, so chickenpox, I think it's something that I'm probably not going to be immune to, like, ever at this point. Just the way, I know I've had this vaccine more than once, and it's unusual for them to, like, wear off. So I know I'm not like a sciencey person, but I do like science, and I will read about it. And it's unusual for these things to, it's not unheard of, but it is unusual. So yesterday when I went to get the vaccine for chickenpox, it was an adventurous day. Most of the places around my house where I go to see the doctor, they're closed right now. So the one location that's closest to me is a half an hour away, which isn't that far, but it's still like, it's not something I could just take the freeway to and get easily. I got to, when I was driving to the appointment, I was on this one road, and it was right before I had to turn to where the facility is, but I was still like 5 minutes away. And there was a car accident, but there was like 8 cop cars, and they had 2 of the lanes shut down, and it seemed a little overkill for one vehicle, but maybe there was others that they had already removed or something. I don't know, but that caused a lot of traffic. And then, because everybody's merging into one road, and then I finally got to Kaiser, and I was trying to check in on my phone. They have a thing where you can check in on your phone. You don't have to touch anything. And I went upstairs because I knew it was on the 3rd floor. And when you enter on the 2nd floor. And then my phone wasn't working there. And I was just like, oh. So I went back downstairs and I checked in. So I ended up checking in a few minutes late. I think I was less than 10 minutes late checking in. And usually they give you a 15-minute window. So then I went back upstairs, and they started calling people. And they called everybody that was there. And then everybody that came after me. And I was like, okay, I was late. That's my punishment. Whatever. I'm not going to complain. But then after an hour of waiting, I was like, okay, something is going on, because usually if you're a few minutes late, they don't make you wait an hour, or and there's nobody there to like ask or talk to. So this woman, this nurse came out and she got a woman. I was like, excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, because I really don't like to like butt into other people's time. But I was just like, I haven't been called and I've been waiting for like an hour. And she was like, okay, what's your medical record number and what time was your appointment? And I told her why I was there. And she was like, okay, we'll come out and get you information. So I'm like, okay, it's fine, thank you. I'm not complaining, I'm just curious, because things happen. So, and this actually, what happened yesterday, or was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. What happened yesterday has happened to me before. So she came back out with another nurse, and they told me that the person who scheduled me didn't schedule it correctly, and they scheduled me with somebody who wasn't there that day. So they didn't know that I was actually in the waiting room. I mean, I know that they could see me, but they didn't know why I was there. And I was like, okay. And they're like, we can squeeze you in, because it's just a shot. It wasn't anything too invasive, but they were like, we need you to do a pregnancy test. And I was like, I know I'm definitely not pregnant, but I will go do the test because it's their policy. And I had the ultrasound a few days before, and if I was pregnant, she would have said something. And I just know I'm not, because I just had my period as well, and we've been abstaining because of all of this. So it's like, okay. So then I go back downstairs, and I did the test, and I didn't have to pee. I was just like, oh my God. When they call me, I have to pee, because I was just like trying to like mentally tell myself, pee, you have to pee. And so I went in, and I barely peed, but it was enough. And I saw blood, and I was like, great, I'm having my period. I'm like, oh, I just had it. But it was just a day of spotting, and today I'm fine. So that makes me happy that I'm not bleeding again, because I don't want to go through my period anymore. I'm so tired of having my period. Yeah, yesterday was just exhausting. And by the time I got home, it's like I had Tuesday or Wednesday and Thursday. Both those days were just go, do all this stuff. And it was kind of crazy. And because the getting the vaccine took way longer than I thought it was going to. I thought I'll be gone, a little over an hour, because it's half an hour away. I'm like, I'll be gone like an hour and a half at the most. I was gone 2.5 hours. I didn't do any of the other things that I had planned yesterday. So I'm not even going to get them done today, because I ended up sleeping so late. But tomorrow I have a DIY project that I want to finish, which shouldn't take me that long, but I don't want to do it at night. I kind of want the daytime, and it's like, the sun is going to set. It's like 7:30 right now. So it's kind of late here, and in like 30-40 minutes, it's going to be dark out. So it's like, right now is not the time. And I want to spend some time with my husband too, because it's evening and he's not working. He should be off of all his calls and everything. Yeah, so that's my update. Side effects aren't that bad. And I have another ultrasound scheduled for Sunday. So I'll have more details next week. So I'll be doing these once a week until I am at a point where I know that I won't have anything, and I'll let you guys know if it's not going to be once a week. But I'll try to put other videos out if it's not once a week. If I don't have any IVF things, I'll try to do something else. And then if you go to my Instagram, you'll see a video. My cat escaped today, and I have 2 cats, a girl and a boy. They're siblings. And Cleopatra's little girl, I opened the window, and we're on the 2nd floor, and she managed to leap out onto the pitched roof of the living room. Our bedroom was like over the living room. There's a piece of the living room where the ceiling is vaulted, and so that's what she jumped on top of. And I was getting ready. I was doing my makeup and everything, and I looked behind me. I'm like, she's not there. Like, the window's open. I'm like, did she jump out the window? Because the last time I opened the window, I could see her going like this. Like, she kept trying to like go out. And I kept telling her, Cleo, because I was watching her. And every time she looked like she was going to, make a run for it, I would say her name. But she was behind me, and the little mirror that I used to put my makeup on, I just didn't see her. So I was like, oh my God, she's gone. And I thought somehow she got off the roof. And I opened the window. There's 3 windows in a row, and they're the kind that lift up. In California, they go back and forth, but this goes up and down. So I opened the other one, and then she came walking towards me. I was like, oh, thank God. And I caught it on video, and I backed away from the window so she would come in, because I think if I stood near the window, she would just stand there and like kind of stay away from me. But yeah, I got her in the house. I was just like, oh. And Sweet Peace escaped a couple days ago as well. They're like They're all black, so they're totally ninja cats. They're like, you can't see me, and they sneak away. He got outside because my husband had the door open and he was doing something and it was nighttime, and he's like, it's fine. They won't get out. I'm like, yeah, they will. And then I look over, I'm like, he's right there in the bush next to you. And he's like, oh my God. So we had to chase him back into the house because he's just like, it's fine. He won't get out. And he's like, I'll see him. I'm like, how are you going to see a black cat? And there's no light out here because our porch lights weren't on. And that's what he was trying to fix at night while it's dark. And I'm just like, really? So yeah, they've both been outside, but we have too many wild animals. I don't want them out on a regular basis. It's too dangerous. There's a coyote in our neighborhood, and I don't want them to get eaten. Anyways, I will try to make videos once a week because I'm going to be adding more drugs into this, and I don't know if I'm going to have side effects with them. And I do have another ultrasound on Sunday, and I don't know what next week is going to bring, so we'll see how things go. But so far, things are okay. They've been a little, like, hectic, but nothing horrible or anything. So it's going good now. So I will see you guys soon. Bye.